All right. Orthodoxy isn't going to make you a man. Christianity isn't going to make you a man. Yet there are a lot of young single men who are leaving the traditional churches to find a more masculine alternative, as this article says, and that would be the Orthodox Church. Now, I've heard from many Orthodox podcasts that, yes, there are more converts coming in, but now this is official. This is from the Telegraph, so this information is becoming more mainstream and, as it were, official. Not that podcasts aren't official, but let's take a look at this stuff. Young single men are flocking to the Orthodox Church after discovering the masculine Christian religion through online influences. Who are these online influences? I bet you Jay Dyer and David Patrick Harry. Those are probably the two of the biggest orthobro online influencers in the Christian sphere. There are others, but Jay Dyer is going to be the biggest one. His name is not mentioned in this story, but let's continue. Some converts say they felt disillusioned with the feminization of Protestant churches and were attracted to the authenticity of Orthodoxy, which they claim pushes them physically and mentally. Priests are now planning to open new parishes to accommodate the tsunami of young men. Now, we're going to see in this article they talk about the feminization of the Protestant church, and it's never defined. It's never defined. So let's continue. So we got an Orthodox guy. He's the Orthodox now. He used to be an atheist, and then he found a video in which a Protestant visits an Orthodox church and speaks to a priest. And he watched that and said, okay, this makes a lot of sense. What really drew me to Orthodoxy was the structure, the guidance, the authenticity, and the historicity. The structure, the guidance, the authenticity, and the historicity. Nothing about doctrine there, nothing about Jesus there, nothing about what really drew me to Orthodoxy was my felt need for Jesus Christ. No, it's structure, guidance, authenticity, and historicity. So he ended up joining the Orthodox Church in September of 2024, I guess. So a 2023 survey by the Orthodox Studies Institute of Orthodox Clergy finds there's been an 80% increase in the number of converts in the Orthodox Church since 2022, compared with pre-pandemic levels in 2019. Many of the 60% were men. Many of them have been drawn to the masculine nature of church, which puts emphasis on denial and pushing yourself physically. That's right. When worshipers must stand for long services, which can last upwards of 5 hours. They must fast too, sometimes for up to 40 days. This, some felt, was in stark contrast to other religious denominations where they felt the church had been feminized. There's that word again, feminized. What's it mean? We're not told. It's just in quote. The church has been feminized, with no definition of what in the world that means. So, the masculine nature of the church, which puts emphasis on denial and pushing yourself physically. So that's asceticism, the denial. I don't know what pushing yourself physically is. I guess it's the standing for long services for up to 5 hours and fasting, but fasting would be the asceticism, the denial part. But there are Orthodox churches that have pews. You can sit down at some Orthodox churches. They don't all have, open spaces. But you know who else fasts for 40 days? That's right, the Muslims. They fast for 40 days every year. That's called Ramadan. So there's nothing unique here. There's nothing... Is Islam masculine all of a sudden? Some people would say so. Emmanuel Castillo, 32, converted to the Orthodox Church in 2019, a journey that started when he began reading the Bible while he was guarding Al-Qaeda prisoners in Guantanamo Bay. Now, can you believe that? You're guarding prisoners in Guantanamo Bay, and maybe they're being tortured with loud music from Britney Spears or Metallica, and you're sitting there reading the Bible. I mean, that's just a hilarious little blurb right there. The former wrestler belonged to a Protestant church, but felt his services were not too different to his Saturday night in the bar. They had the same kind of lighting, same kind of music, same feeling. And after reading the Gospels and Book of Acts, I knew that's not how they worshiped 2,000 years ago. I kind of knew, hey, I don't think I'm in the right church. Well, he's right. If you're in a church that feels like a Saturday night in a bar with lighting and music, with rock and roll. If you're in a church that has a rock and roll band, you are not in the wrong place. You're not in the right place. Searching for something he felt embodied the teachings and practices of the early Christians in 2018, he found St. Ignatius Orthodox Christian Church. Now, when he talks about the practices of the early Christians, how early are we talking about? Because the Orthodox Church today uses the liturgy of St. John Chrysostom and sometimes the liturgy of St. Basil. That's not the early church. That's not the Book of Acts church. So if you want a church that worships by like the Book of Acts, you're not going to be going to an Orthodox church. Does he know that the early church also baptized naked? That's right. If your Orthodox church doesn't baptize you naked, you're not doing it like the early church. So that's not really a good bar, because things change. Styles of worship and practice change. It used to be that to be a bishop in the Orthodox Church, you had to know the Psalms, books of Psalms by heart. Is that still true? I don't know. I've been told that it's not necessarily true. But the thing is, things change. And so what happened 2,000 years ago isn't happening now. The Orthodox Church is not the church of 2,000 years ago. It's just absolutely not. What do they do during the service? They read from the Gospels. And you'll hear people say the early church didn't have a Bible, but here they are reading from the Bible, and then they close the Bible, and the Gospels are in a big, the covers are made of gold, and they kiss it, and they parade it around the room. Is that how the early church, is that the Book of Acts? Did the Book of Acts worship a golden covered gospel and kiss it and parade it around the room and incense it with incense? Smoke it with incense, whatever? No, absolutely not. So it's not a good standard. We're going to worship the way they did 2,000 years ago. That's not a good standard for anything. The father, too, has since left the military, was baptized the following year. He was baptized into the Orthodox Church. Okay, was he naked? Did this guy get naked when he was baptized? Was he naked in the baptistry and then given a white robe? I highly doubt it. And so he's not doing that's not Orthodoxy. That's not. And look at this. Here he is, so masculine. He's got that cross. I forget what they call it, but that is an Orthodox cross. He's got his little Orthodox tattoo, and he's an Orthodox strong man, because Orthodox, as we're going to see, makes you a man. Mr. Castillo is open about his faith with his thousands of online followers and receives scores of messages from young men interested in the Orthodox Church. Are they interested in the Orthodox Church, or are they interested more in how he got that pretty banging physique? Do you think he's natty? Is that what somebody natty looks like? Don't know. It's unfortunate. He believes the surge of men converting the Orthodox Church is a rejection of the feminization of other denominations. It's unfortunate that feminism has sunk its teeth into all of our organizations, to include Christianity. He said that at Protestant churches, the majority of leaders aren't good, strong men, whereas Orthodox teachers are more like father figures. They look like fathers, etc., etc. Now, that is such a general statement that it is meaningless. It's meaningless. The majority at Protestant churches, the majority of leaders aren't good, strong men. What Protestant churches? Obviously, that guy went to a rock and roll church, which is, I would not say that's a church at all. I would say that's a bastardization of the church. Evangelicalism has really gone off the rails. But I know plenty of Christian men who are strong Christian men, who are good role models, who are even what you would call righteous men. Men of good character and good faith. Now, these people belong to the Reformed churches, which are a lot more conservative than your evangelical churches are going to be. But their churches, their denominations hasn't been hit by feminism. It's still led by men. The deacons are all men. The ministers are men. So what is he talking about? This kind of generalization does no good. So here he says, Jesus Christ, he thinks, is the perfect example of masculinity. Someone capable of calling down all of heaven's armies to destroy his enemies, but who instead chose to serve others. I'm very comfortable with physicality, and because of my Orthodox faith, I'm also very comfortable at just, being soft and kind, but being capable also of violence towards, those who would do harm to those I love. I think young men, too, they want it. So Jesus Christ is the perfect example of masculinity because he was a meek young lamb, a meek, mild lamb who could also be a lion and destroy his enemies. In fact, this guy says that's what he likes. He likes being a big cuddly teddy bear who would actually be able to tear your head off if he needed to. But this idea that Jesus is the example of the perfect example of masculinity does despite to the gospel. That is such a twisting of the gospel, of who Jesus is and what he came to do. And what is the gospel? The gospel is the power of God unto salvation. And who is Jesus Christ? He's the lamb sacrificed before the foundation of the world. He is also God. He is God who became man. He is the second person of the Trinity, the Son of God, with a human nature. He's not just a man. He's also the second Adam. I mean, this thing that Jesus Christ is going to teach you how to be a real man is not to be found anywhere in the gospel. And it's just as awful as those people that talk about, buddy Christ and hippie Jesus and all that. It's just as awful. A masculine Jesus is just as awful and unreal as hippie Jesus or buddy Jesus. Father Paul Truenbach agrees that part of it was drawing young men to the Orthodox Church because they naturally want to be masculine in the most positive sense of the word. They want to be men. Nothing about Jesus. Jesus is not drawing these people to the church. They want to be men. They're looking for ways to be men. It's a tougher form of Christianity. I think a lot of men have embraced that and realized that this is a form of self-denial with real results that actually brings peace and joy to the heart and nothing else. And there said Father Truenbach. And there it is. That is a denial of the gospel. Father Truenbach, an Orthodox priest, says Orthodoxy is a tougher form of Christianity. And it's a form of self-denial with real results that actually brings peace and joy to the heart like nothing else. Wrong. Denying yourself food doesn't bring you peace and joy. What brings you peace and joy is Jesus Christ dwelling in you. That's what brings you peace and joy. Knowing that there's nothing that separates us from the love of Christ and the love of the Father. That can bring you real peace and joy. Just denying yourself food, standing up for 5 hours, that doesn't bring you anything else. That doesn't bring you joy at all. And that's what this is. These people think that they have to do things. They have to do things that will merit their salvation when there is nothing you can do to merit your salvation. He said that men in his parish have started taking cold plunges as well as making their fast more extreme to push themselves. Wow. You want to have an extreme fast? Be like the Stylites. Be like Simon Stylites and go stand on a big pillar and fast for 40 days, 3 times a year. And destroy your body and have yourself actually crawling with maggots like he did. Go ahead. You want to push yourself to the extreme, but that's not what Christianity is about. But that seems to be what Orthodoxy is about, at least for these people. They're not coming to Orthodoxy for Christ. They're coming for Orthodoxy for themselves because they want to be men. Here we go. The challenge of the Orthodox Church appeals to many young men. Orthodoxy is challenged in the physical sense too and requires a lot. They live in a world where blah, 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 blah. You know who else? You know who else has challenging? The Buddhists. You can see these Buddhists online with no shoes, doing chores, walking up and down the mountain, doing things that are strenuous, denying themselves. Or you can have, like I said, the Muslims who fast for 40 days, all of them. Christianity is not about the challenge. Christianity is about faith in Christ. Who do men say that I am? And you will see there is nothing in this article about Jesus except that he is the perfect embodiment of masculinity. And then we see, you have people finding orthodoxy and saying, hey, this is sort of masculine. This is militarized. This is really hard on my body. It's aesthetically challenging. Yeah, and like I said, so are the Muslims. So are the monks, the Buddhist monks, who deny themselves and beat themselves and actually do incredible feats of strength. Now, like I said, there's nothing in here about feminism, defining feminism, but what could be more feminine? What could be more feminine than having somebody feed you? How about this? Look at that. This is how you receive communion. This is how you receive the Eucharist in the Orthodox Church. You are spoon-fed the Eucharist. You are spoon-fed the body and blood in the Orthodox Church because the Orthodox Church thinks you're too much of a baby to receive the sacraments with your hand. So you got to be spoon-fed. What's more feminine than that? Not being able to feed yourself. And you want to talk about the feminization of the Protestant Church? How about all the Orthodox people who believe the alphabet lifestyle is okay? Callistos Ware, one of the editors of the Philokalia, believed that. He believed that towards the end of his life. He changed. He believed it. He said, "There's nothing wrong with being a sodomite." And there's others that support sodomy in the Orthodox Church, and there's other Orthodox people that support women. What about Frederica Matthews Green? She's a Orthodox woman who teaches on Ancient Faith Radio, what is she doing? Teaching. What business does that woman have doing teaching? So, if you want to talk about the feminization of churches, don't leave yourself out, Orthodox. Don't leave yourself out. Anyway, the bottom line is, becoming Orthodox is not going to make you a man. It's not even going to make you a Christian. That's it.